Without further ado, it is our pleasure to bring in Seth Wickersham, who wrote It's Better to Be Feared, The New England Patriots Dynasty and the Pursuit of Greatness. Seth, this book is available. It's been out since October the 12th. Great to be able to catch up with you today. I've had this, so let's just give me a little background on how I come to my viewpoint here. Because I grew up in Chicago. I was a part of the Bulls dynasty as far as like that was my childhood. And, you know, I was at Jordan's rookie year first playoff game at home. I was 11 years old. So I was like very, very pro Jordan and anti-management and all that. So when it came down to Brady and Belichick, I was always like, look, the quarterback is more important than the coach. I don't understand why this is such a hard thing to understand. If Tom Brady wants X amount of money, he's going to go down as the GOAT. You pay him that, and he doesn't end up in Tampa Bay winning Super Bowls. Maybe he's going to go back to back. Do you look at it like hey, Belichick has equal parts success to what Brady did for New England? Do you look at that differently now? How do you break down that part of it?
Well, it's a quarterback-driven league, and it always will be. And the two people who, more than anybody else on this planet, should have known better than to underestimate Tom Brady are Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, and they ended up doing just that. There had been some problems in the building for a while, for a couple of years before Brady left, but the main through line of it, more than the TB12 stuff with head coach Bill Belichick and more than, Jimmy Garoppolo and all these other things that came up over the years, was Brady wanting a contract that would take him until he was age 45. And the Patriots just weren't willing to do that. I think they wanted to evaluate him more on a year-to-year basis. And so in August of 2019, at this point, Belichick and Brady have 6 Super Bowls together. Again, he wants a contract that takes him until age 45. The Patriots refuse to guarantee that. He signs a 1-year deal that lets him be a free agent at the end of the year. And 48 hours after he signed that deal, he and his wife put their Boston area home on the market.
How much of not giving him that contract was ego-based versus just, this is impossible. You can't play until you're 45, and we have to think about what's best for the franchise?
Yeah, it was extreme circumstances. But, I mean, there were some elements of his performance in 2019 that, he only averaged, I think, 6.8 yards per pass. But still, this was all kind of done before the season, and they were defending Super Bowl champions. And yeah, they had just won a Super Bowl and scored only 13 points in doing so, but he was still Tom Brady, but it's just a weird situation. A lot of the other coaches around the league watched his film from 2019 and kind of landed in the same place as the Patriots did, most notably the San Francisco 49ers. He was interested in playing there. That was kind of his first choice. And then the Las Vegas Raiders, who kind of decided to stick it out with Derek Carr. I mean, it wasn't just the Patriots who kind of ended up evaluating Tom Brady that maybe they shouldn't guarantee him a contract for 2 years. Again, it's not the first time that the league has committed scouting malpractice when it comes to Tom Brady.
That's true. Number 199 overall, and we can go all the way back through it. So since you brought it up like that, and you've done your best to understand how he got to be Tom Brady and all the success, what was missed there, or what did he do differently along the way that allowed him to achieve the level of greatness that he's achieved? I mean, there's always a huge cost to that, but he figured out something.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the book's about. There are some fights and some swear words and some kind of juicier moments, but the book itself is about trying to understand the greatness of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and the DNA of it and what the costs of it were. And I think that there's a couple of moments in Brady's life where things could have gone either way. And one of those when he was in college and he was buried on the depth chart. He has a conversation with his dad one night. Says, "Dad, I don't know if I'm ever going to get on the field." And his dad's like, "Yeah, you might not." And he told head coach Lloyd Carr that he was probably going to leave Michigan and transfer to Cal, where he'd be closer to home and probably could get on the field sooner. And that night he goes and talks to his counselor at Michigan, a man named Greg Harden. And he's kind of whining to Greg Harden about where he is in the depth chart, how he'll never get on the field. And what does Greg Harden do? Does he hug him or give a bit of tough love? No, he starts laughing at him. And he says, you want to leave, go ahead. You haven't done bleep here anyway. And if you leave, no one's going to care. And really, Brady had no response to that because he was right. And if he had decided to go to Cal, he probably would have had a good college career and maybe played in the NFL and would probably be in the business world right now. But instead, those words kind of ignited Brady's internal competitiveness. And the next morning, he goes to Lloyd Carr and he says, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to prove to you I'm the best quarterback on the team. Prove. And I think that that's where a lot of what you see from him and this insatiable appetite to not only continue playing, but to continue proving things even to himself comes from.
Great stuff. The Belichick side of it, I mean, here's a guy who gets his first head coaching crack after and earning it in Cleveland, but it doesn't go well, right? And so and then he gets to New England. No one was calling him the greatest head coach in the history of the game. Your understanding of his belief system, where he got to eventually got to my way or the highway. I'm Bill Belichick. Go after yourself, basically. How do you kind of track that evolution?
Well, the interesting thing about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick is they came into each other's lives at the critical moments in each other's lives, professional lives at least. You have Bill Belichick, who, you're right, he had his entire life annihilated in Cleveland and, had to wait 5 years to get another chance and then goes 5-11 his first year in New England. And then you have Tom Brady, who nearly went undrafted. And so they both knew the fragility of the profession that they were entering into and really needed, it was like essential to their core and their self-identity that they be successful in it. And I think that Bill Belichick, he won the lottery with Tom Brady, but he also knew how to develop him. And he developed the hell out of him. And they met. Remember, Bill Belichick was the quarterback's coach of the Patriots in 2001 because Dick Rabine, the quarterback's coach, died in training camp. Belichick and Brady met twice a week for almost their entire careers in New England together. On Tuesdays, they would go over every defensive back they were going to face, a detailed scouting report, and develop which route combinations they wanted to run against them. On Saturdays, they would go over the game plan. And really, I think what Belichick was able to do is he's always just been this brilliant defensive mind, obviously, but he knew the offensive game and he was able to find a way to be on the same page with his most important player, almost breaking the game down to its essential components, the head coach and the quarterback. And because of that, they just figured out a way that they thrived so well together. I could go into a million examples of some of the brilliant defenses that Belichick dialed up over the years and the ways that he got into the heads of opposing coaches and quarterbacks. But from a broad stance, he was a total head coach and is a total head coach, fluent in offense, defense, and special teams. And that's one of the reasons why he knew how to get the most out of Tom Brady and also coach well on the defensive side.
Do you think he was motivated to prove hey, I'm not going to be he's talked about not, retiring at some point here, not coaching past 70, which he's creeping on. Mm-hmm. Do you think he was motivated at all to prove, look, I can do this again without Tom?
Well, I think so, probably inherently in some way, but they're just interesting. Like, one of the reasons in the book that I sort of write about them as characters and show how they evolve and not just write Super Bowl to Super Bowl is because the Super Bowls, it's not that look, they live for that moment, but it's almost like a weird byproduct of a larger compulsion and obsession that has no signs of diminishing. Like, these two guys are really good at moving the goalposts. I mean, for a long time, Brady said, I'm going to play till I'm 40. Now it's 45. After the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, his wife and kids come onto the field, and the first thing she asks him is, what more do you have to prove? And he figures out a way to change the subject because he didn't want to answer it, because that's not what it's about. It's about the fact that these guys know that their lives will be emptier without football on Sundays than it is with it.
That part of it is genius, because like Jordan, my guy, I'm like, don't you understand? There's nothing you can do in your life that's going to give you as much joy as playing basketball. I get it. You're burnt out, but this is you. This is what you do, which is why Hey, Bill, if you could coach to 85 and then one day in, whatever, OTAs, that's it. You have a heart attack. Well, you went out doing what you loved. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I mean, my best friend is a writer at ESPN named Wright Thompson, and he wrote this brilliant story on Michael Jordan when Michael turned 50. And the entire story was a portrait. It was kind of a sad portrait of a guy who couldn't do what he loved most, despite everything that he'd achieved in his life and all the money that he had. And, I never thought about Brady being exactly the same type of way as Jordan in that regard. But it turns out Brady seemed to have learned the lesson, and he watched his heroes retire from football, not because the flame diminished, but because their body started to break down. And he decided, sometime in the middle of his 30s, that was just not going to be him. And he's resolutely devoted his life to have it not be that way.
There's a zillion angles this, but I want to cover the Alex Guerrero part of it. Because if I'm New England, here's a guy who's helping Tom. Tom likes him. Tom's our guy. I got no problem with that. Tampa Bay's got an office for the dude, but it was it control. You're not bigger than the team. Like, why was that such an issue in New England? Like, if maybe I'm here remembering it wrong, but they, like, for somebody who was just following the news at that point, they made him out like he was this shady character who was doing like terrible things, when in essence, guy's great at his job seemingly.
Well, he's had some issues in his past, and there's no getting around them. And I think that his credentials were questioned. But I think the bigger deal was that after the Falcons Super Bowl win, things just changed in the building. The dynamic changed. And Brady came into training camp really pushing his TB12 business. The book had just come out, or was about to come out. And there was players on the team. Belichick would go out of his way to make resoundingly clear that Alex Guerrero had no official role with the team and was not a Patriots employee. And, there was players on the team that didn't know what to do, because they were like, do we align ourselves with Tom Brady and go to TB12, or do we align ourselves with Belichick and go to the Patriots doctors? Because TB12 people were very critical of the Patriots doctors. And again, players just kind of felt trapped in the middle. And so Belichick drew some lines and curtailed Guerrero's access because he felt like he needed to solve a problem.
Did Robert Kraft, along the lines, like, he's in the middle of this whole thing here, and do you think he helped, hurt, had no impact? I think that's hard to believe, but let's throw that in there as an option on the relationship.
Oh, I think on the relationship, you mean like that year specifically, or long term?
Just how I guess more like the decision making of Brady getting to the point that he's going to leave, and Belichick getting to, I guess we can dial it back to Garoppolo, or the way Guerrero was handled, just the different decisions they were making. Like, how much of a guiding hand did Kraft have in all of this?
Well, I think he viewed his job as a way to, like, mediate between these two very stubborn and type A personalities and try to figure out ways to keep the band together. So that 2017 season, obviously there's a lot of stress in the building with Guerrero, Jimmy Garoppolo. Belichick didn't want to trade him and ends up, having to trade him at the very last minute. And then they lose the Super Bowl. And, Brady basically was telling people, I'm not coming back. And he ended up asking Kraft for his release that offseason. And, at the end of the day, I think that Kraft looked at his job as like, I've just got to try to figure out ways to get these two. I don't think he cared if they liked each other or not, but, can we keep it together? And so by and large, he did a pretty masterful job at that. He had always told Brady that if Kraft decided that if Belichick decided to move on from him, he would let him have some say in his fate. And then he moved that a little bit to say publicly, Brady's earned the right to walk away on his own terms. But at the end of the day, Kraft ended up backing Belichick in this contract dispute until age 45. I think Kraft felt like that he was appeasing Brady by giving him the right to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year after all that he had done. But at the end of the day, Belichick takes the heat for that decision, but it was an organizational decision to not want Brady around until he was age 45.
I'm guessing you don't know the answer to this, but if you had to speculate, do you think Kraft regrets that decision?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
can you imagine being Robert Kraft a month ago and watching Tom Brady on your field quarterbacking the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Can you imagine how sick that must have made him feel?
Right. And they're better this year.
Or better this year. And, New England, they might make a run here, but certainly they didn't start the season, hot. Let's put it that way.
Right. Hey, Seth, appreciate the time here, and tremendous job putting this whole thing together. And this topic will never get old. So people can be buying this book 10 years out, but it's already you were telling me it's already on the New York Times bestseller list. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Good talking to you.
Yeah. Good talking to you as well.